The notification arrived while I was on a conference call with our Seoul counterparts, closing a deal I had cultivated for 11 hard-fought months. The sort of deal that could have propped up our entire Q4. I was genuinely smiling, a foolish, happy grin, when my display chimed with the subject line, "Urgent. Role redundancy notification." I let it sit for a moment. I assumed it was a phishing attempt, or an error, or perhaps a badly timed prank for the wrong season. The voice on the call continued in precise, formal English, and I kept nodding along, while the email just sat there like a cold little blade waiting to be turned. I hit the mute button and clicked it open. It was legitimate. 2 short lines from the COO, Joseph Harper. Due to an organizational restructuring, your position is now superfluous. Please have your desk cleared by 5 p.m. today. Your final compensation will be wired within the next 14 business days. I stared at the words. A chill settled deep in my bones. Not anger, not sorrow, just a profound quiet, the kind of silence that precedes a storm. I unmuted myself. We'll proceed with Seoul's terms. I'll forward the documentation by day's end, I stated, then ended the call. They were not going to receive that documentation. Not ever again. I strode to the women's restroom, secured the lock, and faced my reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back was composed, her lipstick immaculate, her blouse still neat from its morning press, her expression a perfect mask. I didn't weep. I didn't shout. I simply pulled out my phone, navigated to an encrypted partition labeled Thanatos Directive, and tapped the screen once. A loading wheel spun soundlessly. No blaring alarms, no system crashes, just a systemic shutdown, creeping like a mist over every asset they thought they controlled. Back at my desk, I packed my things slowly, methodically, the items that held meaning. The 1922 fountain pen passed down from my grandfather, my worn university ID, a stone paperweight carved like a chess pawn, and the framed photograph of my son, now an adult serving overseas, who still believed his mother was just some mid-level project director. I left the accolades behind, not the 12 plaques for strategic excellence, nor the ridiculous crystal trophy engraved with "Vision is Victory." I was no longer a visionary for them. Outside my office, the monitors began to waver. First, the main operations dashboard on the 6th floor. Then, the data analytics command center on the 8th, and the logistics server seized up. The internal communications platform, Synapse, kicked everyone offline. OmniVault, Oracleon, all of it. Even the high-end coffee machine in the C-suite lounge flashed a red error and died. I didn't need to witness the full collapse, but I stayed, just to be sure. And that's when Joseph came rushing in, his dress shoes tapping anxiously on the floor, panic written across his features like a child who'd lost his balloon at the fair. He stormed into my office, just as I was slipping the pawn paperweight into my satchel. "What in God's name did you do?" he demanded, his voice thin and cracking like an old cassette tape. I looked at him with complete composure. "You told me I was superfluous, so I eliminated the superfluous elements. You find this amusing?" he hissed, striking my desk with his palm. I rose to my feet deliberately. He instinctively took a step back. "No, Joseph," I said. "I find it poetic." And I walked right past him. His phone buzzed as I entered the corridor. His voice dropped to a low growl as he answered, "Yes, I'm aware of it. No, I have no idea how to reverse it." He didn't even glance at me as I went by. He would, though, soon enough, because what they all failed to grasp, what only I had ever understood, was that I hadn't just constructed the digital infrastructure of Ethelgard Technologies. By the following morning, half of my former clients had made contact through secure channels, not to inquire about what had happened, but to request a place at my new table. The Seoul deal was finalized. I signed it under my new LLC, Cinderstone Systems, a name forged in fire, trademarked months prior, discreetly, because this was the part no one ever grasped. While they were labeling me redundant, I was orchestrating my own succession, not just for survival, but for evolution. Wren had assembled the core team, 2 former data scientists I had recruited from an internal layoff list, a freelance legal expert who had once sued us and held more respect for me than her own firm, and a systems architect from Montreal who had been blacklisted for refusing to compromise user data. We were a team of outcasts, and together, we were formidable. That morning, Joseph finally made a public appearance. A live broadcast. He was sweating, disheveled, with a frantic look in his eyes. He leaned into the boardroom camera like a classic villain in his final scene. "There has been an unauthorized intrusion by a former employee," he declared. "This criminal act will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. We are working around the clock with our partners to restore essential services." He paused, then added, off script and unhinged, "She thinks she can tear down everything we've built, but she was never the foundation. She was just a tool." That clip went viral on Pulse in under 5 minutes. Wren posted a single word in response: wrench. The replies were swift and brutal. No system fails like that, unless she was the system. If she was just a wrench, why is your entire company bleeding out? Put some respect on her name. Cinderstone is coming. He didn't see it yet, but his press conference was the best marketing I could have asked for. Every word he uttered was another turn of the noose he had placed around his own neck. The world was finally seeing what I had known all along. You don't fire the architect and then act shocked when the building collapses on top of you. The Department of Justice contacted me that evening, not with threats, but with inquiries. A man named Finch, his voice sharp and unaccented, didn't bother to name his agency. He didn't have to. The way he spoke my name told me he wasn't working from a prepared statement. "We've become aware of a potential misattribution of intellectual property," he said. "Are you prepared to state that the system architecture was your exclusive design?" "Every single line," I answered, "and every failsafe, which is why your subpoenas will be useless against their legal team." He was silent for a moment. I heard the flick of a lighter on his end. Then, "Would you be open to a consultation?" I smiled, not from pride, but because I could feel the power dynamic finally shifting. For 2 decades, I had constructed defenses for other people. Now, I was being asked to advise on how to dismantle them. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I simply said, "Send your inquiries in writing. My new counsel insists on it." Then I ended the call. Wren messaged me. "He tried to rehire your entire old team, offered them all double their salary. No one accepted." I wasn't surprised. Loyalty wasn't about money. It was about shared experience. It was about me staying up past midnight to fix their botched deployment plans, about covering for departmental blunders, about protecting interns from HR blowback while I was still coding at 4 a.m. They didn't follow me for a higher paycheck. They followed me because I had been broken first, and I had rebuilt myself to be sharper. The board moved for emergency mediation the next morning. Their official statement blamed a rogue former employee for disrupting operations beyond contractual and ethical boundaries. Yet, they never once used my name. To name me would be to admit I was someone to be feared, but that didn't stop the downward spiral. First, a new leak surfaced. Screenshots of internal memos detailing Joseph's strategy to eliminate all non-essential female leadership over 45 by Q3. The term he'd used was sunsetting legacy voices. That phrase ignited a firestorm. The hashtag, #legacy voices, don't go quietly, was trending for 48 hours. I didn't have to write a single op-ed. Someone else did it for me. A former contractor from their DevOps team. He recounted to the world how I had once thwarted a massive DDoS attack while attending my own father's funeral, with one hand on my laptop and the other on my son's shoulder. People called it an urban legend. It wasn't. I hadn't cried that day. I hadn't eaten. I hadn't told a soul. I had just fixed what no one else knew how to. Now, the world knew. And Joseph? He disappeared. 2 days later, the company released a statement. Effective immediately. Our COO will be taking an indefinite leave of absence. Not a resignation. An absence. That same hour, Ren sent me a picture of the brass nameplate from his office door. Discarded. Cracked. Stained with what looked like spilled coffee. The caption read, "He was gone before the cleaning crew arrived." I guess even he knew it was done. I didn't respond. By then, I was busy watching Cinderstone Systems onboard its 5th major client in 12 hours, and Sol had just wired a 7-figure retainer. No fancy office. No bloated overhead. No asking for permission. Just me. The quiet empire they never saw forming because it didn't wear a suit, or network at corporate lunches, or play nice. It wore scars, and silence, and lines of code. The first media request arrived at 3:14 a.m. from a journalist at Circuitry magazine who admired my resilience and wanted to write a profile. I deleted it. Then came Apex Chronicle, Bytebeat, Fortune, all asking the same thing. Would you be willing to share your side of the story? There was no side. There was the truth. And then there was the aftermath. Joseph's empire didn't go down in flames. It just decayed, from the inside out, the way things do when the belief in them is gone. Their next earnings call was delayed. Twice. Their stock was halted, then it plummeted. Clients abandoned them like sailors from a sinking ship. Meanwhile, Cinderstone didn't run ads. We didn't recruit. We didn't make sales pitches. We just answered the phone, because a reputation for competence travels faster than any marketing campaign. My reputation was no longer a whisper in the corridors or a footnote in a report. It was echoed in every encrypted crash log they couldn't decipher, in every contract that was renewed with my signature instead of theirs, in every quiet declaration of, "We would rather follow her than try to rebuild with you." I offered Ren the chance to be the public face, CTO title, full partnership. She turned it down. "Let them wonder who's running the back end," she said. "A little mystery is good for business." Smart woman. Our contacts in Seoul sent a case of custom-engraved pens. Our Nordic client sent a bottle of wine so old the cork disintegrated as we opened it. The agency in Langley sent nothing. But 2 weeks later, a high-level cybersecurity contract appeared in our inbox, with no competitive bidding process, just a set of coordinates, a budget, and a non-disclosure agreement longer than a Tolstoy novel. We accepted it. Then one morning, my son called me from his base on a video chat. He studied my face for a long moment, then said, "Mom, you're trending on Pulse again." I laughed. "Am I finally cool?" He shook his head. "No, just terrifying." We talked for a while, about everything and nothing. He asked if I was happy. I told him I wasn't sure yet, but I wasn't angry anymore, and that felt new. That felt like enough. After we hung up, I walked out onto the rooftop terrace of the brownstone I had just bought. No mortgage, no attachments, just mine. The breeze swept in off the metropolis, a silent ovation. Down below, the world kept turning. Lawsuits were filed, companies pivoted, careers were reinvented. Joseph did resurface, eventually. New company, new suit, new city. But the story followed him, because while he might have buried the incident under a pile of NDAs and settlement checks, he could never erase the one truth that would always define him. He wasn't outmaneuvered by a competitor. He was outlasted by the woman he had declared redundant. And I didn't just leave with my revenge. I left with the blueprints, the master keys, and the entire kingdom. And I had no intention of ever letting someone else guard the gate again. I was its sole proprietor, and hidden within those millions of lines of code was a single provision, a trigger that could transform their entire kingdom into a house of cards. By the time I reached the parking structure, the security detail had been mobilized, as if I were some kind of corporate terrorist. 2 young guards, neither old enough to have been employed when I was first hired, attempted to politely stop me by the stairwell. One of them reached for my arm. I didn't even flinch. "Ma'am, we've been instructed to escort you back to your office." I cut him short. "No, you've been instructed to delay me, which means they're in a panic upstairs." and have no clue which button to press next. He blinked, confused. Are you making a threat against the company? I smiled, a slow, measured expression. No, I already followed through. Behind me, a soft ding sounded. The elevators were, for now, still working. I took the stairs, as a matter of principle. By the time I got to my car, I had 47 missed calls. 6 from their legal department, 1 from Joseph's private number, and another from our sole partner's assistant, who was already inquiring why our server connection had been severed mid-protocol. Excellent. Let the inquiries commence. As I drove out of the parking garage, I saw a huddle of frantic executives gathering on the sidewalk, phones pressed to their ears, ties loosened, bewilderment hanging in the air like smog. Not one of them looked in my direction, except for Wren, my former assistant. She was 26, brilliant, undercompensated, and quick with a coffee run, but even quicker with systems architecture when I'd let her work on it during my sabbatical. She was standing on the pavement, clutching her tablet like a shield. Our eyes met. I gave her the most imperceptible of nods. She didn't return a smile, but she held my gaze, because Wren understood not everything, but enough. Enough to guess that the company's backbone wasn't built on corporate policy, but on a personal one. I drove down to the harbor, my sanctuary, a worn-out park bench beneath a struggling sycamore, partially shaded by the derelict wharf and the fading graffiti from a time when this city had bigger dreams. From that vantage point, I watched the first waves of the fallout. It began with an investor's post on Pulse, unexpected service disruption at Ethelgard, possible internal security issue. Then came a thread on the forum. Is anyone else's company-wide access at AT just gone? Dev environment is offline. Error 904, and Joseph's frantic post on ProLink. We are currently conducting a scheduled systems audit. We appreciate your patience. Scheduled, my foot. I opened my own laptop and launched the encrypted drive, watching the diagnostics dashboard refresh in real time. Central file repository. Offline. CRM core. Corrupted. HR portal. Rerouted to a dead mirror. Financial servers. Unresponsive. One red light blinked, then another, and another. It was like a dark constellation materializing, spelling out the message. You shouldn't have provoked the architect. That's when the serious calls began. Not from the company this time. These were different. Encrypted numbers, international prefixes, contacts that weren't in any corporate directory. One rang. I picked up. A woman's voice. A hint of a Munich accent. Crisp and cool. You activated it? I did. Is it isolated? Yes. For the time being. A beat of silence. You are aware of the consequences if they manage to trace it back. I wrote the protocol. They won't. She paused again. Nevertheless, be ready for extraction. If their legal tactics fail, they will come after you personally. I gazed out at the gray water. They already did, I said, and ended the call. Because this was never just about being fired. This was not a simple case of corporate backstabbing. Joseph had kicked a hornet's nest without bothering to read the warning sign on the hive. Now, he wasn't up against a disgruntled ex-employee. He was up against a woman who never needed to ask for power because she had always possessed it. Concealed, complex, buried deep within the system, waiting, and now, finally, unleashed. The breach didn't truly begin with the servers. It started 2 years ago, the day Joseph was promoted to COO, and decided that his own reflection was more valuable than the company's foundation. He arrived that day smelling of arrogant cologne and spouting disruption buzzwords, talking about sunsetting legacy roles and maximizing shareholder value through operational streamlining. The translation was simple. He didn't appreciate a woman over 40 earning significantly more than him, and my salary was substantial. He didn't dismiss me right away. No, Joseph was more cunning than that. He began to chip away at my influence. He cut my department's budget, reorganized my reporting structure, and replaced my trusted second-in-command with a young man who believed cybersecurity was just a matter of changing his email password occasionally. It was subtle warfare, a death by 1,000 administrative cuts. But he didn't realize I'd witnessed this playbook before. Not from him, but from Julian Croft at Nexus Core Systems back in Dongwon, the same kind of culture-first charlatan, with a blinding smile and a messiah complex, who tried to erase my contributions, and ended up erased himself, financially, professionally, and, by the time I was finished, psychologically. That man sends me greeting cards now, from his therapist. So, when Joseph began his games, I started drawing my own blueprints. I began constructing the loop, a parallel shadow infrastructure that mimicked every critical operation in the company, but reported exclusively to me. Think of it as a master key, unseen, untraceable, but upon activation, it would supplant the primary systems, one function at a time. Why? Because Joseph wasn't just inept. He was a liability, and one night last October, he confirmed it. I received an alert on my home system at 2:17 a.m., an unauthorized access attempt on the Salary Vault database. The origin was internal, from a masked IP address, but the digital signature was careless, barely hidden by a weak VPN that routed through his assistant's laptop. The Salary Vault contains far more than pay stubs. It holds stock vesting schedules, past offer details, severance agreements, and potential blackmail material. I didn't confront him then. I simply logged the breach and refined the loop's sensors. From that point on, every keystroke from the C-suite was mirrored, cataloged, and archived, including a document I discovered 3 months later. It was a back-channel memo, marked confidential, with the title, Phase 3, Post-Redundancy Compensation Realignment. My name was on a list with 4 others, all women, all VPs or higher, all over 45, all designated for termination with cause, minimize liability. No wonder he had started looking through me during board meetings. No wonder the legal team had stopped including me on compliance updates. No wonder my team's wellness budget had been axed, while Joseph had a new artisan coffee bar installed beside his office. He was orchestrating a quiet culling, and I was planning a much louder one, because this was no longer a personal grudge. This was a declaration of war, and in war, you don't brandish your weapons. You conceal them, you wait, and then you detonate them, when everyone is too preoccupied with their lattes to hear the ticking from beneath their feet. 3 hours after I departed, Joseph launched what they likely termed a recovery cascade. I observed it all from the comfort of a 5-star hotel lounge downtown. Company card, of course. They hadn't managed to revoke my privileges yet. Another mistake. The television over the bar cut from a silent sports broadcast to a breaking news banner. Major Pacific Northwest tech firm. Paralyzed by internal anomaly. Operations at a standstill. Sources report. I took a sip of my drink. Neat. No frills. And refreshed my diagnostics feed. They had restarted the central server, which activated a recursive function in the mirror system I'd created. This loop mimicked a successful boot-up, while feeding them corrupted data. To them, everything appeared normal on the surface, but underneath, it was a tangled mess of false directories, ghost data, and digital dead ends. I had them chasing shadows. That's when Joseph called me. At last, a restricted number. So unprofessional. I answered and said nothing. He began speaking rapidly, his words tumbling out. I don't know what game you think you're playing, but this constitutes corporate espionage. You're facing lawsuits, potential prison sentences. We can still salvage this, Thea. My first name, as if we were colleagues. You cleared my desk, I said, my voice even. Now it's time to clear your conscience. I'll pay you. Out of my own pocket. Just reverse whatever you've done. Oh, Joseph, I said, my tone almost saccharine. You believe this is about money. He went silent. You always thought it was about the money. That's why you will never grasp who you're truly dealing with. I disconnected the call. Then, a text arrived from Ren. A single line. He's losing it. Just asked it if a complete power down and a blow-dry might work. I let out a dry, humorless chuckle. Then I replied, "Retrieve the mirror drive. Initiate Phoenix Ascent. You know the rest. No emojis, no pleasantries, just complete trust." Because Wren was more than just an assistant. She was the protégé I had secretly mentored. I taught her between quarterly reviews, during late-night crisis sessions, and amidst the turmoil of past layoffs. I had recognized her talent years before she did. She was methodical, precise, and had never once deviated from protocol. More importantly, she knew the escape plan. I had designed it not merely to burn the old structure to the ground, but to resurrect it under a new identity. Joseph had never heard the term Cinderstone. That name never appeared in any server log, meeting minute, or IT manual. But Wren knew it, because beyond the loop, beyond the silent kill switch, beyond all the misdirection, lay the inheritance, the complete infrastructure I had quietly partitioned and hidden behind defunct shell corporations and dormant domains for over a decade. It was secure, independent, portable, and with the correct trigger, it would reemerge as a new entity, one where the clients would follow me, not the brand. I didn't have to fight for relevance. I had already engineered it. They just hadn't grasped that when they cut me loose, they had actually severed themselves from their own spinal cord, and the clock was ticking, because the next morning, the Soul contract was due to expire, and I was the only person who could renew it, and this time, I would be signing it under my own name. Soul did not keep me waiting. At precisely 9:01 a.m., their time, 8:01 p.m., my time, I got the encrypted communication through the secure channel we had established during a period of political instability in 21. One word, broken. I replied, "Not broken, unplugged. Interested?" The response arrived 4 minutes later, with a PDF attachment. It was a letter of intent, direct, unmediated, and addressed to me personally. They weren't committed to Ethelgard Technologies. They were committed to my intellect, my architecture, and my system of redundancies that had kept them operational through typhoons while their other vendors failed. Now, they were proposing to transfer the entire contract. No intermediaries, no Joseph, no interruptions. I closed the file. At that moment, a sense of finality washed over me. My hands were steady, but my heart gave that familiar jolt it used to before a major presentation that determined whether we met payroll or had to shutter operations across half a continent. It wasn't relief. It was a sense of arrival. Wren called 30 minutes later. A secure line. Her voice was strained but steady. "He's barricaded himself in the IT vault," she reported, "shouting about how you've stolen the company's soul. Legal is trying to file for emergency arbitration, but they can't even get into their own template servers." I leaned back in my chair. "Perfect. Go to Phase 2. She paused. "Thea, this will erase everything. The company archives, the board's private files, even your own work history." "I know," I said. "It had to be a total wipe. Untraceable. If even a sliver of my system was recovered and pulled back into their network, they could claim partial intellectual property. They would drag me through the courts until my hair was gray, and my life's work was reduced to a stack of legal exhibits. So, Phase 2 didn't just burn the bridge. It scuttled the entire land mass behind it. Wren typed in the failsafe commands. I could hear her sharp intake of breath as she executed the final line. Phoenix, Ascent, Sequence, Solus, Execute. Boom. Not a loud explosion, but a quiet, surgical excision. My digital signature evaporated from every build log, every version history, every access credential. The digital plaque outside the innovation lab that once featured my name flickered, glitched, and then reset to read, unattributed. Within the company, panic gave way to despair. They weren't just locked out anymore. They were severed from their own history. I opened my laptop one more time and logged into the Phoenix Ascent backend. It was pristine, flawless, and fully active. Within the hour, 3 more messages arrived. One from a Munich Aerospace Corporation, one from a Nordic fintech consortium, and one from a Langley agency that doesn't officially exist. All of them asked a variation of the same question. Are you taking on new projects under the new banner? I smiled. A banner. How fitting. That's what I had been for 22 years. A shield, protecting fools from storms they never saw coming. Now, I was the storm, and the rain had just begun. By midnight, Ethelgard's homepage was nothing but a static landing page with a typo-riddled apology. We are experiencing unprecedented technical issues. Please check back later. That misspelling told me everything I needed to know. Joseph was typing it himself, and he was falling apart. I knew his pattern of collapse. I'd witnessed it before, when investors grilled him too intensely during quarterly meetings. The nervous tick in his right eye, the way his jaw would tighten when he didn't have an answer, and had no one else to blame. I had once rescued him mid-presentation with a fabricated technical difficulty and a dummy demo. He bought me an expensive bottle of wine afterward, treating me like a nanny who had covered up his mess. Now, there was no one left to manage him. At 12:22 a.m., I received a private video message from his wife, Morella. A video message. I hesitated, but curiosity has always been my weakness. She was in their kitchen, dimly lit by the glow of the microwave clock. No makeup, no pretense. Just the profound exhaustion of a woman who had been living with a man's private disintegration long before it became public. "Thea," she began, her voice low, her gaze heavy. "I don't know what he did to you, but he keeps repeating your name, like it's a prayer or a curse." She glanced away, then back at the camera. "I know this is meaningless to you now, but you were right. About him. About everything." She ended the message there. No appeal, no excuses, just raw surrender. I didn't feel a sense of victory. I didn't feel anything at all. The game was over. The board was charred. No pawns, no kings, only ashes.